Hey, so today I'm watching a video from JeffMara channel. He has an interview with Peter Whitley. He's basically the UFO director of Japan who has been abducted at least 3 times by aliens. And I'm going to be reacting to some of the parts of this video so you can watch the whole thing on Jeff Mara's podcast YouTube channel. Please go out, check out his channel. He has a lot of interviews with people that have been abducted by aliens and also people that have experienced near-death experiences and all the stuff. So a lot of great material, probably to some that watch my videos will be some like, hey, look, something new, or you might already know the guy. So check out his videos and hopefully the guys will be okay with me doing some reaction and just commenting on some things. It's going to be interesting. So we'll see what happens.
Do you think grays are actual entities, sentient beings, or do you think that there are biological robots?
Precisely that, Jeff. In fact, so let me preface this by saying this year I've conducted exactly 40 astral projection sessions with the express intent of visiting a UFO. Successful sessions. I've had some failures. And that's exactly what I was told by the Greys, that they are basically biological robots, and that their purpose is in assisting the development of our souls. Now, when I say development and when I say souls, I'm strictly using, the terms we use in English. All communication, both consciously and on the astral plane that I've had with them, it's done telepathically, and it's not done via words. It's communicated via ideas, right? And so I guess maybe that's just the closest analogy I could put it. Yeah.
So right here, a very good explanation by Pierre. From most of my experiences, when I get out of body and I meet a lot of these like ETs and let's say whether it's like Greys or reptilians and Mantis or even someone like Pleiadians and Lyrans, doesn't matter who's it out there. You'll notice that they're not like going to open their mouth and start talking to you in English or your native language. A lot of communication, like Pierre says, is in telepathic ways, and not even like you're getting words, you're getting the images, the visualization, like a lot of things. And for me, I noticed that when these beings are showing something to us, a lot of times they can already sort of read through us. They know what kind of beings we are. And they will be able to give and present information in ways that you could digest it and understand it. So for us, for me especially, it is a struggle to put it in words, like first, like English is my second language. So I already have like a barrier of misspelling, mispronouncing, misspeaking, and saying things like, oh, well, I didn't say it right. And no, I meant the other word and different concept, so like I already have a harder time telling like, oh, like I had this experience, but how do you put it in words so that people would understand me here? But the other thing is the concepts is very interesting. And, like we can do our best to interpret it and try to say it in our own ways to some level to represent what these beings have explained to us or showed us. And, it's a great topic. It's a very good topic. Peter says, like some of these Greys have told him that like they're there to sort of like work on developing the consciousness, the soul, elevating it. And again, that is his way of saying what the alien said. And even right now, I'm like, okay, watch that part, and I'm saying it in my own words. So it's already like they meant it this way, Pierre said it this way, Aquila said it this way. So it's already like a little broken phone, so to speak. But we can never say that all of these aliens or all of these Greys are bad. My point is like there's never good and bad, right and wrong. We can never just look at the whole group, the whole community, the whole race and call them one thing. Like you literally have to talk to the individuals. And while the Greys are pretty much like programmed, hive-minded beings, they're working like mercenaries. So whichever group hires the group of Greys, they're going to be using certain like, okay, you go and abduct people and do experiments on them or gather some information and various things. But some of these grays are not there to actually hurt you or mess with you. Like, okay, they're going to be involved in the abduction, but it's like really bad, hardcore comparison, but it's like slave labor in China. Would you rather pay someone in America to do your job for 700 or pay some Chinese person to do it for $5? I might want to save some money. So even the good races, let's say Pleiadians and like Lyrans and stuff, some of them, I'm not saying all of them, but some of them like, hey, well, we're gonna get in touch with this person and we're gonna use a few grays, like just cheaper, faster. Even like at some point, it's like we already have beliefs. Oh, well, all of grays are bad, and if it's grays, they're like they're working with reptilians and all this stuff. And in a way, it's kind of like camouflage, because oh well, there's a gray ship, they're carrying a human, so cool, like whatever, we're not going to attack it because it's already going to the dark bad side, so to speak. But a lot of good people out there, a lot of people that we know from our past lives, will be using that same technique to like, oh, we're going to connect to someone we care, someone from like our groups, our soul family, all the stuff. And they might want to meet you and do some like astral surgeries on you or give you some information or whatever. A lot of things go on there. But, I wouldn't call all these, let's say, grays good or bad. They look differently. But same people, like, if you didn't like how Black people look like when you first met them and, oh, aliens and they shouldn't have the same rights we do, it's like we treat the aliens the same way. It's like, oh, they look differently, they shouldn't have the same rights we do, and they're bad. Like, no, you haven't even talked to them, you don't know them. And of course, like, they're mercenaries, so they're hard, and whichever group hires the grays, like, then you're gonna deal with certain kinds. So like you can always look through, like, okay, what kind of grays am I dealing with and who's their higher up, like who gave them orders, so then you're gonna know who's behind it. But that's my thought so far.
They also revealed to me during one of the early astral projection sessions that I had, I asked them, I said, well, if you help develop our souls, do we ever develop into one of you? And this gray was rather amused. The interesting thing is they exhibit personalities, perhaps a bit muted in terms of relative to human personalities, but they do exhibit personalities. And this gray was a bit amused. And he said, no, we don't have souls. He said, we were created, we're what you would consider biological, but we were created to assist entities that have souls. The implication there being that it's not just humans, that there are presumably other entities throughout our universe with souls.
You're absolutely right on this one. A few things, like from my experience, you can always meet various grays out there. And I met some who will just be completely, like Peter says, muted, like they're not talking, not showing any emotions, and they're specifically to their job. But at some point, like when I'm dealing with some of the clients and they're like, okay, Aquila, Aquila's going out of body, and then I'm on a mission, like, okay, who's messing with my clients? So I'm like, I feel like, I don't know, like a mob, like, okay, someone hired me from Earth, now I'm fighting for humanity, and who's dealing with this person? Like, I'm going to pay you, like, So a lot of these experiences where they just don't expect me to jump onto their ship, like they're carrying on with their own business. A lot of grays, some reptilians inside the ship, and I just jump in there, like I just manifest into their ship, and there's a lot of chaos. Like some of them are running around, some of them like showed like this, like, oh, like they didn't expect it. There's this sort of surprise or scared face, a bit of panic, and sometimes they're like, just got a straight think, and of course they're a bit of hive mind. Someone will take like the control or spread the message, like, oh, there's human on the ship, and like everyone knows already. So there's like they're either covering it up or just trying to hide, or like just like, okay, let's get this person out of here. But the thing about us, each and every one of us, I see you and me and everyone else as gods. your consciousness is limitless, it's infinite, so you can do absolutely everything. Here on Earth, we're sort of limited in terms, but once you realize your potential and how your visualization and imagination can create everything, when you know that, okay, if I just start imagining that this spaceship I'm in and this gray I'm seeing that is kind of like scaring me, if they turn into a cat and you imagine it and that alien is going to turn into a cat, if they know you can do that, they will show respect because, of course, they don't want you to mess with them and they're just doing their work. Grays are just tools, sadly. They're being used. And you always have to look behind, like, okay, who's using them? But yeah, he's Peter's totally right. Like, there's so much behind it.
How are you astral projecting to communicate with them? Are you like meditating or what?
That's a great question. So for about 20 years, I've been practicing self-hypnosis and audio-guided hypnosis. If you had asked me 2 years ago if I believed in astral projection, I probably would have laughed at you. And I would have said, no, I'm interested. I believe in UFOs, I believe in extraterrestrials, but I'm interested in the nuts and bolts of the phenomenon. I'm not interested in these more esoteric practices. But what happened was, after 20 years of near daily self-hypnosis, I became a bit bored with my routine. So I decided to see what other types of hypnotic or inductions were out there. I tried meditation before, and for whatever reason, meditation just doesn't really sit well with me. I'm not a meditator. But what I found as I went deeper into the types of hypnosis that are out there is I found that there were there's a very popular, I don't want to endorse anyone, but there's a very popular program out there that kind of pioneered a combination of meditation and hypnosis to achieve an out-of-body experience. And I took that course. Not in person, they have an in-person institute, but you can purchase their materials. I took that course just in the hopes of spicing things up. Like I said, I was a bit bored with my regular hypnosis was self-confidence or motivation, etc., etc. Yeah. And so I took that course. After taking that course, these days, what I do is more of a combination of hypnosis and the things I learned in that course. I've recorded my own hypnotic induction. And from there, I begin the process of what they call the vibrational stage. Once I'm under hypnosis, I vibrate my body, my astral body, out of the physical body.
Can you pretty much do this at will, or is it kind of a spontaneous thing?
It's not spontaneous. I need to schedule a time to do it. For instance, during my lunch break, for example, I'm lucky enough to have a sofa at work where I conducted some of the sessions, or at home, laying on a bed. Yeah. But I believe after so many years of practice with hypnosis, the process was quite easy for me. Actually, after I completed the course that I mentioned, I was able to astrally project pretty much every time I tried. Yeah.
All right. I know you're not endorsing, but and I'm sure other people would like to know, what program are you using?
The Monroe Institute's Gateway Experience.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah. And like I said, I modified it a bit to my own personal use because I'm a bit more comfortable with the traditional hypnotic induction. But I use many of the, or most of the applications they use to physically or astrally exit your physical body towards the end of that. Yeah.
I'll just add that Pierre's doing a great job. Basically, like everything out there, like whereas like Robert Monroe, or you're looking at some hypnotic commands, or like you're listening to some frequencies, It's all tools. So there's a lot of them. Some of them will work for certain individuals, some of them will not work for others, and it's fine. But we have to find like what fits us. And even when we find it, like Peter did, like modifying it to our own like liking and benefits, that's the best way to do. It's just like, like even like when I'm talking, some of you will cherry pick some of the things I say or do and like techniques, and okay, modify it all to your liking, and that's the best way to go. Even with the meditations and anything, like there are no rules, no rules. So just like, okay, well, there's this thing, there's one possible concept of how it is done, just take it, modify it, see what works for you. That's a really good way. As regards like getting out of body and the astral projections, Pierce way is like, I like it, it's really good for decent, like some people are trying really hard to get out of body or do astral projection, and self-hypnosis is really good way. Like whether you start with like just confidence or just go into, like, okay, like I'm out of body. I'm out of body. I'm speaking to aliens, and every night I'm learning something. Like whatever you do, like that would be great. Like anything, any kind of effort is like already like, damn, kudos to you, person. Um, for me, I'm just glad I have my more natural abilities. But again, everyone can do this. It's like a muscle. You just have to train it. So I'm no special. I'm just like you. I've just been using this muscle a bit more than most people. And for me, like shifting would be like, I just have a little bit of different concept. And like Pierre says, like for a lot of people, it's just like, hey, more into scientific way and like really meeting and seeing the real way, and not just the esoteric of, oh, okay, you're just gonna go and visualize and stuff like that. Like no, but once you understand the reality of it all, like when you have the real deal conversation, when you start understanding things, just like for me, you give me a target, like I'm like a dog, you give me a target, I'm gonna go find it and all this stuff. But again, like sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's like, oh, gotta work at it, got to like sometimes something will be blocking me, or I have to work through my own little issues and all. But yeah, there's a lot.
So you've had 40 encounters with them.
Yeah.
How have you changed as a person with all these encounters?
Quite deeply. Like I said, even 2 years ago, I would have kind of laughed at the idea of astral projection. Additionally, I'm not a spiritual person. I never have been. In fact, if you'd asked me 2 years ago if there's such thing as a soul, I would have told you I'm uncertain. But having had these experiences, I do firmly believe that we humans have something which we call a soul. And I do firmly believe that there exists something after we leave our physical bodies, i.e. die. Of course, you can leave your physical body through astral projection or other means. Yeah. But so that's deeply affected me. Of course, now I hesitate to say I'm spiritual, but I believe in the soul.
Good for him. A lot of people, I was working with those that think they don't have a soul. And it was like kind of like hard to explain certain concepts. Like they want to get out of body, but how to explain it? For that, you need a soul. And, like, okay, there's astral body. And if you don't believe in that, like it's really hard. But for Peter to come around, like I respect it. He doesn't have to be full blown spiritual, like into spirituality like I am or some others. He has his own beliefs, his own hobbies and interests and everything else. Go for it, man. It's like really nice. But just to have this getting, let's say, astral projection, meeting some like grays and other beings out there, having conversations and, successful, like being fully conscious of it all. It's amazing. Like, being able to bring back some change of feel like, oh, damn, I didn't expect that to happen. So like it takes a lot of effort to sort of break through your own core beliefs and what shapes your reality. But it's a lot of work, and just like, wow, I'm really glad that like you did. Like even just that little bit is enough.
Can you share with us some of the profound things that you've learned from them?
Certainly. Let me kind of take you through the initial stages of when I began astrally projecting there. After I completed the gateway experience and learned that I was able to astrally project, my first thought was, I want to do this and contact a UFO, contact whoever or whatever is behind this.
Sorry for being the mic hog. I just think like Peter is like really smart, and Jeff is great at interviewing him. But like a lot of people will try to gather in deserts and pay thousands of dollars to go to a certain place, and we're gonna look at the sky, we're gonna do this chanting or something else, and try to get some UFOs and aliens come and show themselves, and like we might get some interactions and encounters. That would be great, but it takes a lot of effort, and eventually it's not as fruitful as you would like it to be. A lot of people that would go in those events, and I can't remember the famous person that would like do them in the deserts and everything else, but it's like some of us, one by one, we might have seen something paranormal. We might have seen some UFOs, and it's like, ooh, like damn, like it gets our interest, and we kind of want to like talk to these interesting, like intelligent beings and understand more. And with that interest, we're being led, but in ways where we keep spending money, we're going in circles, and eventually never getting any like rewards as we would like. What Peter is doing, this astral projection, and I would recommend it to anyone who has some level of confront and good visuals, is like each and every one of you can do that with a bit of training. And if you need a guide, that's good. If you can do it by yourself, good for you. But you can actually have the whole conversation and talk to these aliens yourself. You don't need to go to the desert. You don't need to chase UFOs all the time unless you're interested and you want to get some footage and everything else. Just like, great, good for you. But at any time, like even yours right now, you can be sitting on a couch and, just relax and focus on your target. And you can literally connect to like grays or reptilians or mantis or tortoise beings, anything really, and ask your questions, but again, like confront, being able to understand and knowing when to get out or what to ask specifically, that's another thing. But yeah, it's totally possible. Like kudos for Peter for doing that.
And so the first time I tried to do that, with the intent of doing that, I was successful. However, the first roughly 6 or 7 times, what would happen is I would enter a UFO. Now, the process of leaving the body and entering the UFO is not as straightforward as you fly up into the sky, you see the UFO, and you enter. It's more of a process of your intent is to go there. You're out of your body astrally. You're aware your body is there below you. Your intention is to go there. And you more or less instantaneously zip up there.
100% right. Like it's always how I've been doing it. And pretty much if you have your intention, you simply teleport or materialize, like you disappear from here and you just appear over there. And I can't remember a single time when I was like, oh, there's a like flying saucer or like UFO, I'm gonna go get her. And then I lift up and fly. Like that never really happened. Like it's always like, oh, look, a spaceship, and I'm there. Like if I have an intention, if I want to be there, I'm gonna appear. Same with like, I will just add this detail for people that are like looking into the afterlife or what's waiting for them, and what happens. Like it's not like your physical body drops dead, like, and you're just gonna walk around and oh, I can fly, and then you're gonna fly out of Earth. That again doesn't really happen unless you are very much sort of like attached to Earth and have very strong beliefs of what's going to happen to you after death. If you believe that Jesus is your savior and he will come and get you personally, you're pretty much going to be stuck here waiting for him to come. And if you give yourself the freedom, like we were talking about, you just have an intention and you go, you don't have to worry about possible grids or soul traps or other things. It's like, okay, think of where you would like to be, and you can create your own realm with your imagination, with thinking, by defining it, by describing it to yourself. And once you put your intention, you literally just you just manifest there. And you just boom, disappear from here. You don't have to fly and travel and avoid things. A lot of people have these fears, but like I'm glad that like Pierre's bringing it up. It's like it's not that straightforward of just flying over there. And of course, if you have certain beliefs that will make you a bit limited and that you have to fly and go through the entrance, yeah, that's going to happen. But, if you do empower yourself, if you think like, hey, I can teleport, if you have seen some movies, played video games, and seen some superpowers, or let's say X-Men, and everyone has their own quirk and like, oh, I wish I would have that. You can totally do that. You can mimic it. You can have it. So, of course, I'm maybe describing this whole, it would be astral projection thing more on the uptone, happy days, happy things. It's not always that nice. Really depends on where you go, like lower realms or not. But yeah, a lot of experiences out there.
So roughly the first half dozen times when I arrived, I was placed in front of a window with a very bright light. And it was almost blinding. And I asked, of course, that first time, is there anyone there, and I was just told you have to wait. So there was a waiting process involved with a few minutes. And that happened for the first half a dozen times. Yeah. So when I first was eventually let in, the first thing they showed me was what we know as the hybridization process. I was shown a nursery, and there was what appeared to be a human baby in there, and what appeared to be 3 human nurses with the baby, sort of tickling him or something to that effect. And there was a gray with me as my guide, and the gray asked me, "Would you like to hold the baby?" And I would say, "Is that possible?" Because I'm in an astral form. Apparently it was possible. As I went to hold the baby, what I realized is that these 3 nurses that I thought I saw were actually grays themselves, but there was sort of a hologram, if you will, over them. And this became a constant throughout my experiences.
Wow, it's really nice. What I'm talking about is that Peter has very genuine experiences, very detailed, and I probably couldn't put it in words as well as he does. But a lot of these groups, we talk about, okay, well, I'm on an alien ship, I'm seeing grays, and there's some people. So possibilities, secret space program. Oh, well, someone is serving and like is on their ship, but holographic, like just a hologram, so that babies would perceive you and like, okay, it's a human, and they feel comfortable, and it's so right. I mean, it's the right thing to do. Like, damn, yeah, so totally true.
They try to disguise the environment in a way that so we can have some familiarity with what that environment is. So whereas what I thought was a nursery, when I realized these weren't actually human nurses, I asked the gray that was my guide, I said, "Could you please show me what this place looks like in reality?" And the gray did so. And it turned out it was basically, like I mentioned before, just a white environment with some vague plastic type, furniture, if you will, or moldings in the wall. Yeah. So this is common.
Again, like, absolutely right. I mean, is the most logical thing to do. And again, like, unlike humans, aliens don't really do like, oh, look, and they're looking through the window and admiring the stars, and they're really like interested. Like, they don't really do that. They're interested in their own business, and specifically with grace and them being hive-minded. They have missions, of course, like little places to sit down and just carry on their stuff. Yeah. But it's not like they're going to need their time to like, okay, let's stop the day to have some tea and look around, move the curtains. And they will really do that. But for humans or certain types of beings that can visit their place, let's say, yeah, sure, their technology is so freaking advanced that few touches, few clicks, and all of a sudden we feel like at home. It's like, oh, this is like very similar to Earth, and we feel comfortable. So definitely, like, there's like a lot of ways how they can make us feel like, oh, I'm kind of used to this. Like, yeah, just kind of like weird seeing your big eyes, but other than that, it's like, sure, you know. And same thing, it goes in a lot of different ways. Like, what I'm talking about, I don't want to say good and bad or only this way, because a lot of different beings, like individuals, if they're, like have consciousness and awareness and everything else, they're going to have their own thinking. And, at any point in time, they can change their belief system, they can change the way they act and do things. So a lot of times people have these dreams and experiences where it seems, I don't know, like suspicious or like a good cover up, I would say. Like there's this lady that would dream of being in a hair salon in 50s or 60s, and I've only seen it in movies, but they would have this big thing that they put over your head, and they're gonna dry your hair and stuff. I think that's what they did in movies. But that would be like, oh look, well, this is just like I just dreamed of being in 60s and being in a hair salon and having this thing done to my head. It's just like, yeah, I just felt like that. And in reality, you could have been taken, or you could have been into this, like, let's say, astrally taken, or in a dreamscape. So it's like more like a construct of a dream created, and literally, like, they can mess with our dreams and everything else. But it's kind of like a cover up. You dream, or you think that you have dreamed about being in the 60s, you had this like hair thing on your head, and in reality, you've actually been like aliens opening up things or just like messing with you and everything else. That happens. So like a lot of little thingies, but sometimes you have to pay attention. Like for me, I had like I had to double check. I've had this like weird dream where, like I wake up and there was this like twig or stick in my nose, and I'm like, oh, this feels so weird. Like, why would I have it? Like, how did it even get there? And then I go out of body and I check. They're like, oh, look, it wasn't a twig, it was a wire. I was on this like alien ship and everything else. So like, there's a lot of variations of how it can go, or like, yeah. So like their technology to give this perception of reality to us. When we feel comfortable with what we're given, we don't question everything. We don't look really beyond that. So I'm really glad Peter is able to put things in like perspective, and I don't like I wouldn't be able to explain it like he does. So he does a really good job, and like I'm just like, oh, finally someone gets it and says better than I do, and I'm like, that's the truth, that's the thing, like everyone should see that. So yeah, again, like I'm just taking parts of this interview. So please go to JeffMara podcast channel on YouTube. You can watch the whole interview there. He has much more. But yeah, for me, just like, hey, this is pretty entertaining, good stuff. A lot of like, I'm listening to the whole conversation and I'm like, yep, definitely going for it. Like, sounds genuine and truthful. Like, I have meters and everything else checking it. And like, fuck yeah, I can agree with everything they say.
Now, after that, what I was shown by the Greys is they began to show me what they do with our souls. I was taken to, on one of my, probably the first half dozen experiences, I was taken to what looked like a laboratory. Of course, this is, like I said, it's disguised as a laboratory. And from that point on, I would always tell them, please show me how it really appears. This artifice, it's distracting to me. And so, of course, it was another just strange white thing. There was a tall gray there with a capsule of some sort at a white table, manipulating something in a capsule. And I asked my guide, what is inside that capsule? And my guide said, you are. But the guide didn't mean me personally. The implication was, humanity is. This gray, again, had a similar long metal appearing rod and was doing something to this capsule. And I asked, is he adding something to this capsule? What is he doing there? And they said, well, adding's not the correct way to think about it. He's manipulating it to help it to evolve. And when he was finished with the capsule, the capsule kind of shot out of the area it's working with, and another capsule arrived. Yeah. And so that seems to be their involvement with our souls.
Wow. This isn't an easy subject to talk about because as humans, we really lack understanding. We see these things happening. Let's say if we get out of body, if we do astral projection, if we have been abducted ourselves, and it is just the moment in their whole existence. They have been doing it for a very long time, and once we get there, we're like, oh, how dare you? And like, like there's, of course, we can have different reactions, but we really lack understanding, and they can give us the answers. But then again, you would have to like, okay, what are you doing? Like, a lot. So for me, like, it just seems like a consciousness human soul modification. A lot of times people are actually taken, and I'll just say this thing: we're not the only humans, and Earth isn't the only place that has humans. There's like a whole lot more people in spaceships, people in our realms, like a lot of human looking beings. So amplifying, like, it's not just us. We're not alone in this. But man, it's pretty hardcore. It's again, it's a 50-50 thing again, because I can't say, oh, all of them are bad, like they're just modifying us and they're accessing our consciousness. They can do a lot of things. Like, again, depends who their higher up is and who buys out specific group of grace. Let's say reptilian group, Galactic Federation of Flight, they're very involved in this. Even humans, secret space program on Earth and all this stuff. They're going to be interested in various stuff like this. And one of the things is, again, it's like training or, like harvesting humanity in certain ways, or like making sure that you're not much of a threat to certain people. Because things you have been doing before coming on Earth, like a healer, a warrior, a time traveler, like changing the events throughout the whole like existence and everything else, like being in a Trucian race and all this stuff. There's a whole lot going on out there. And when you come here, you're this infinite God being that has to fit into this physical body and forget everything that you are, because right now you're going to have to fit in with the rules and the collective here on Earth. And then again, like, you kind of like limit yourself. Once you start waking up, like, hey, I'm a god. I can actually do a whole lot more than I thought I can. Once you start looking at your abilities, your psychic like abilities and everything else, and using everything that you have as a muscle, like, oh, look, there's a new muscle that I wasn't aware that I had. And you start using it, practicing it, like a lot of abilities you have, you just have to work at it. But when you do, all of us are going to get some sort of interferences. And, like, some of us are being taken, like this guy's describing, like Peter describing, how like we're just in this capsule, this pod, and they just like shove this rod into us. There's a lot of techniques. Like right now, we're just being described one out of many. And I can't make any assumptions or like, okay, like, well, this rod did this exactly, and you have to listen to me because I tell the truth. No, this is like, okay, well, from my experience and what I have seen so far, here are my thoughts. It's subjective. I can be completely wrong. So please, like, cherry pick what I'm saying, question what I'm saying, like, just make sure you like structure your reality the way you want it to go and all the stuff. So there's that. But yeah, there's a lot of like soul and consciousness modification where they can do simple things. It's like having the acupuncture done on your consciousness, but in a way where they can suppress your memory. They can make sure you don't remember certain experiences, or your psychic abilities are suppressed, or all of a sudden some people will have these great ideas and inspiration and things they want to do in life, and boom, it's gone. All of a sudden you come back and wake up in the morning, it's like, I feel so bored. I want to do anything. Like, like you're just going to get like change, like have your whole like state change. Your whole beingness is going to be a bit different, but there's a whole lot of things that can be done to us. Even like with the whole astral surgeries and everything else, it's a thing. And there are other parties, let's say, can be same grace, but now working for the good guys. And again, it's all about perspective. It's all about, like, we're here in this duality, so it's just like a thing. But certain group can actually be taking you and doing an astral surgery, but in a good way. Oh, this person has been suppressed. They've had some implants, and they just like sort of like modify the consciousness, like do little things. And, who are we to judge? They're just doing their own thing. They have their own creators. They're just like following the orders of whoever buys a service. And it's always like a thing. Like we like literally have to go in there and find out the details ourselves. And even then, we're just like players in this massive game, just gears in this massive structure. But yeah, it's a deep topic, really deep, and like very interesting. Like Peter like puts it in really like nicely, explains this really well. So I'm just glad. I'm like, oh wow, like I hope I don't ruin this video by comments and all this stuff. But yeah.
Now, many times, I should say that when I'm up there, it's not usually a matter of me saying, hey, can you take me to show me the laboratory? Can you show me what you do with the souls? They clearly have an agenda. They clearly have something they want you to show you. And many times I would ask questions and they would kind of hand wave it away, say, to the implication being, I probably wouldn't understand. So for instance, when I asked, where does this capsule containing what apparently is a soul, where is it going? They said, don't worry about that. The question isn't where, the question is why. Furthermore, at a later session, it also led me to ask, well, what about, quote, bad souls, like murderers and the like? What happens to those? And they said, again, don't think of it in the terms of bad. Think of it in the terms of underdeveloped. Which further led me to ask, well, if you realize there is this soul inhabiting a human body here on Earth that murders someone, why don't you do something about it? Like I believe in my mind, I was thinking like, we have serial killers here. Why don't you stop that? And they told me, that's not our job. Our job isn't to stop that. Our job is to help them evolve. Yeah. So that's basically what the Greys themselves appear to be doing.
Yep. This goes in a lot of ways. A lot of groups just like, okay, you are on Earth, you have your career. What's the work or what's the job you're doing every day? And if you're doing the job, if you're a cop, why are you going putting a fire out somewhere or, like being an engineer and a mechanic? Like you're just like a cop and now you're going to stop in the middle of the road and try fixing a car. Like, yeah, that's commendable. But okay, if you're a veterinarian and now you're going working in a space, like, okay, like, fine, it's not your job. Like there's an animal in need of help and you're just like working and like going solely in the mechanics. So like some of these CTs, aliens and all, they have their own jobs. Same with us. It's like, oh, I get paid to do this. Same with them. So a lot of people are looking into this, like, hey, we want humanity to be saved. Some people want to get out of here. They want to be taken. Like, okay, there's going to be a spaceship coming over, landing. I'm going to look through the window. Where would be the good place for them to land? Because it's all like kind of like a lot of buildings in the city. So where would the spaceship need to land to take us? Like, and then how will our government look at this whole thing? If there's a spaceship coming over saying, we're here to save everybody, please come into our ship and you're going to be out of Earth. A lot of people are like, yay, let's go. And the government's like, you're abducting our people. And then they're going to go into a fight or whatever. It's a big misunderstanding. So like we have to look at how is it going to happen? Even the whole scenario of them coming in and saving us. And even like if some aliens were here to come and interfere, like, oh, well, there's this murdering going on, or there's this like pedophile doing something and just like little things, good or bad, DCTs, doesn't matter. They have their own jobs. They have their own ways of looking at things. And it's like, they're working from different angles. even if this like group of greys are like, okay, we're just kind of like, from my perspective, modifying consciousness in their own ways. Why? There's a lot of whys, good and bad. And from my perspective, mainly bad, but this is just my personal experiences with them. But I don't know the specific like gray group that he's talking about. I haven't met them. But even then, like a lot of these people being caught up in their game, and okay, like they're just gonna change the experience for them, change their thinking, maybe like not really going to fix a psychopath and everything else. But there's a lot into it. Like you can't just expect to be saved. Anyone that is expecting for like, let's say Pleiadians coming over, well, guess what? They're here, and you are it. You are that alien that came here to help, if that's like you want to look at it. And now you have to take responsibility. Why are you playing a victim when you're here to help? And oh, damn, like, well, I don't remember that. Well, work at it. But yes, it's a lot of that.
Now, when you held that hybrid baby, did it look human or did it look half human, half gray?
That hybrid baby to me looked 100% human. I will say when the nurses were handling it, it was floating. They weren't necessarily holding it. It was floating. At a later date, I was also shown a hybrid baby. It looked to be the same baby, but I mean, at a certain infant stage, all babies kind of look the same, more or less. So I couldn't say for certain.
Do you think grays are friendly towards us?
That's an interesting question, Jeff. I think, first I should say, I can only tell you what they told me. And the things that I've been shown and told there are so beyond the scope of what we understand to be real that they could be complete fabrications for all I know of, right? The grays were very amicable to me. They appeared friendly and they appeared to want to help me understand what they were doing.
Just a little thing I will add, like here on Earth, again, we have a certain belief or perception. Oh, well, there's an alien, they look like that, and this is how they are. And like say reptilians, very intelligent and they're into killing and really aggressive and like taking over, or Anunnaki canine, murderers, completely like merciless and everything else. And so we already have this programmed perception of who they are, and we forget to like, hey, every individual is different. We're gonna talk to them, find out what they're all about. Of course, with grace, a bit of high mind and everything else, but it doesn't mean that everyone else, like all of them, will be exactly the same. It's gonna be like, let's say, okay, if someone buys out specific number of these grays into a group and they're gonna work on a certain project, this group will have this one goal and they will have hive mind about it. And hive mind, like they can all have their own thinking and like processing going on, but it's going to be connected and they all share it. And so with these grays and the Peter's experience, like being on a spaceship and them being friendly towards you, it's totally true. Like I've been on countless spaceships in like other places where, okay, you talk to reptilians and you look at them like, holy cow, like they're massive, like damn, like didn't expect that to happen. And you're looking up like the small tiny little human with this massive like alien talking, and they're respectful, surprisingly enough. They're not like, oh, human, kill them, eat them. Like they're not like barbaric as someone here on Earth. Not all of them are the same. Not all of them will treat you nice, warm, and would you like some cup of tea? Like they're not gonna go with that, but they're definitely like, they're not bad, pretty much like neutral. And of course, again, some of them like various groups, various individuals, those with different goals will have like different ways to come at you. And some might not want you in your space, so they will try to push you back into your body or do something to you. Others like yeah, they don't mind. They would actually appreciate more intelligent beings out there in space playing bigger game than just here on Earth trying to get a job, marry, have children, and all this stuff. Like, not to say that you're bad for doing that. Like, yeah, you had to survive and enjoy life while you're here, but a lot of these like people out there, they don't mind sharing. Like, they see us as sequels a lot of times. Of course, if you know your own power, but if you're going and seeing yourself as a victim and, oh my god, like they're gonna eat me, and if you're already walking with that mindset, they're pretty much like, one of those again. It's like you're just gonna talk to a bully or a person who you really wouldn't want to deal with. But if you're just coming in this way where you're curious and you want to ask some questions, they're pretty much going to be honest about it. And, if they're working on certain projects that is pretty much like, don't talk to anyone about it, of course, they're going to maybe lie about it and like try to like tell you a different answer than you should hear. But you can always get the answer one way or the other. Being polite and talking to them, making deals, or like using any force, and then it's up to you what happens afterwards. But like it's okay to go either way. Like you're not a murderer if you're just gonna like, like you've been it all already. So yeah, there's a lot out there.
I did mention that I had exactly 40 successful sessions with astral projection to UFOs. The reason I stopped at 40 is because I experienced something that I wouldn't say was frightening necessarily, but a bit uncomfortable. In that I do believe the grays, if you look at it from the point of view as we have souls, and that implies we have some depth of spirit, or I'm not sure how you would say it, that they don't. I believe they have some desire to feel what it's like to be human. Towards the end of those 40 sessions, one of the grays began to experiment with what it would be like to inhabit my physical body here on Earth while I was astral projecting. So this is a bit hard to explain, but the process was that the gray looked deeply into my eyes, and there was it felt as if we merged in a sense. And when you're in astral projection, you never lose the sense of your body. You're always aware your body's there. Someone could tap you on the shoulder and you'd wake up, or you'd come back, right? In fact, you could count yourself down. If you find yourself in a frightening situation, you can count yourself down or have a safe word to eject. But towards the end of those sessions, there were a couple of occasions where this particular gray said, I'd like to try something. And like I said, he locked eyes with me, we merged, and I found my astral body, or perhaps I should say my astral consciousness, inside his consciousness. And his consciousness inside my physical body. So we're kind of, if you kind of think of the movie Inception, it's like we're kind of a couple layers deep there. And I could tell that he was gaining an experience there of just what it's like to inhabit a human body. It was a very slow process that started from the head down. It didn't go all the way down. I never lost control of functions. There was no movement made, but it was a bit uncomfortable. That's the point I stopped. I don't think that's necessarily malevolent, but I think you could say that they're probably here to help us, but there may be things from us they also want.
It's a very deep thing. Starting from, a lot of these aliens do have technology and are now using it to inhabit physical human bodies. And a lot of people here on Earth, it looks like a human, but it has an alien mindset in them. It's like same like when we are using the virtual reality like gear set, and we like, okay, well, physical body is here, but we're in the game playing. They have same technology where they're using like their abilities. Okay, they're just gonna glance at you and like sort of look at your soul and become you even for a bit. And they can sort of like really connect into your body, what it feels to be human, what it feels to know all you know and feel all you feel. And it can go deeper. It's not in just the astral self, but there are a lot of ETs already doing this. And on Earth, a lot of physical bodies don't match their frequencies. So I'm not saying that, let's say, all disabled people or with autism and all are like the aliens, but because the frequencies are a complete mismatch, and they can't handle, the physical body just can't handle it. It just like goes into like pretty much being like a bit disabled, a bit like what we would call autism and all this stuff. Not saying all of them are like it, but some, like with aliens just like trying to inhabit the physical body, it's a massive mismatch of the consciousness, of the beingness, of the sentience, and like everything else. Like just like trying to be here, it's like really hard for them. So in the astral, what Peter felt, what if it would be for me talking, but from personal experience, it's creepy and a bit scary just because it's too real. It's not like someone just tapping you on the back and you kind of feel them become you or be in your space. But for me, and from my perspective, all the feeling states when you're out of body, when you're in the astral, are enhanced. And the same way you would touch the wall and feel like, oh, the wall's cool, you can same way use your consciousness to sort of shove your hand through the wall, feeling every single bit and fiber. Where this wood, and you're just like feeling like, yep, feels like wood totally. And it's almost like you're getting a little splinter. Or if it's like, like cement and concrete and all this stuff, and you're just shoving in this like really hardcore, and you can feel every single bit and detail and the temperature, and like it's really freaking real. So when they get within your space, it's not a possession, like they don't really take over and control you. It's, from my perspective, doesn't seem like what happened to Peter out there, but it's like a glimpse of just like, okay, what would it be like if I was Peter? From the greater connecting to him, it's freaking real. But the scariest part is that they can do it like with their technologies, and a lot of people are being messed in sort of ways like where, okay, they might have an interest in you, or in life I would call like some of these people like NPCs, non-player characters, where there's really no consciousness controlling the body, but a lot of beings can just tune in. It's a physical body, perfect for inhabitation. Anyone can use it if they just want to. So various technologies, and that they can take over. Or literally you can know a person who is like, let's say, all nice to you, or has a certain personality, and you know them personally or have seen it happen somewhere else, but they just become a whole different being at some moment. And you can know them really well, and they're always acting in certain ways. And an alien can just tune in and like, what would it be like if I was just in their space? And the beingness change. And it's like, it can scare people. It can cause a lot of like issues and all this stuff. But it's a big thing. Some aliens, different bodies. Like the things I've heard is like, yeah, for some beings out there, the human body seems to be the most sophisticated, the most developed, the most advanced in ways of, like perfect for movements and everything else. For example, reptilians, you have massive strength and intelligence and everything else. For humans, the flexibility, it's the looks, it's the comfort and everything else. Different races have their own like advantages and disadvantages, but not all of them will be like, okay, like they're going to be benevolent and join you and feel and everything else. Like some of them will be bad, but then again, like it's 50-50, really depends. And like you kind of got to watch it. So for Peter stopping, he already went really far, like 40 successful sessions, connecting, talking, understanding, learning. And if that was the line he drew where, I don't want this beings in my space, it's kind of like really uncomfortable. And to experience that again, like, not really, I wouldn't go there. It's, like, hey, you already learned and did a whole lot. Like, thank you for that. Like, people need to know about these things. So it takes a massive amount of courage, really. Like, stop needing to confront. For me, like, okay, like I might have been gaming, I might have seen a lot, but normal person, if they felt that, if they really felt it, it would like really creep you out. And again, really depends on who's behind these groups and their bigger goals. Because like these grays, for me, it would be the scenario where, let's say, we're going to pick, again, touchy subjects. There's a person who, if dies, the insurance will cover it all and all the stuff. And he's basically the whole family going to get a massive amount of money. And he's going to commit suicide. And probably in a harsh way, where just going to take a bomb on a plane and boom, touchy subject. But to his family, he's going to sacrifice himself to give a lot of money to everyone else. And like I'm saying, my family, they're going to be happy. They're going to be able to survive. They're going to be okay. And for them, in their mindset, they're doing the right thing. For the people who were the victims of the whole explosion and lost, like they say, some person, like it just happened. It's like really sensitive issue. Yeah, it's going to be a really bad person. And like, you're going to hate them for the rest of your life and all this stuff. But then again, two sides of the same coin. And right now, everything on Earth is pretty much a duality. Even all these beings, like we see like Grace and reptilians and others, and a lot of the things, you literally can hear the answer and see what's going on. And like, okay, from your perspective, I see that. From my perspective, it might not look like it. From someone else's perspective, it's going to be something else. And it's like, now we're looking at everything from this level and this point of view. But when you just go and talk to more people, talk to their higher ups, or like follow, okay, well, where does the pod go? What happens? Why is it happening? And like, you just go and like follow the processes and check both sides. Who's doing it? And people like receiving the whole adjustments and like modifications and everything else, what happens in their lives. And when you spend enough time, you might start like, okay, that starts making sense. But if you hear just one side of the story, it's like really hard to tell like what's really going on. So Peter's doing a really good job explaining, in his own like experience, like that's a lot. That's a lot to handle, a lot of confront. And then again, trying to put it in words so that people would understand. I think he's doing a really good job. Because for me, like even now, like, I wish I could express my thoughts better. I'm not even like getting out there and like dealing with these beings right now, and like trying to tell you what they told me. So it would be like a different, like more like a clusterfuck for me.
Well, he did ask.
He did ask. That's true. And I agreed. The preface to that is, before that incident happened, he also told me, this on a separate occasion, he said, I'd like to try something with you. And this was on the astral plane up on the ship, where he allowed me to enter solely his consciousness. And from my point of view, my experience of that, it was absolutely ecstatic. I can't even put into words what I felt. I felt almost as if I knew everything, or maybe just my knowledge had expanded. Not in any particular way, but it was ecstatic. And so I sort of assumed that perhaps to him, that's similar to what he felt when he inhabited my body. Perhaps just the uniqueness of that probably gave him some sensory overload, which was interesting.
Do you know what their program is of hybridization?
I do not know what their program is of hybridization. Let me say this. During the course of my 40 astral projection sessions on board UFOs, I met 5 distinct entities. At least I believe they were distinct. Two smaller grays, one tall gray, and two mantis type entities. The reason I say they were distinct, beyond the small physical differences, is they all seem to have slightly unique personalities. As I mentioned before, they do have some form of a personality. Yeah. So one entity I briefly interacted with was an adult hybrid. And this was probably 15 sessions in, and it was after my second interaction with the young hybrid. The adult hybrid joined me, and he appeared almost like a Ken doll. His skin was almost plastic or perfect, just perfectly featured, perfectly proportioned. I mean, he seemed inhuman in a perfect way, although he looked humanoid. And I asked him about him himself. I said, do you have a home? And again, he was also kind of amused at this question. And he said, basically, I inhabit these ships, but I do have what you might call a home. And he gave me a visualization. Sometimes the way they communicate with you is they make you visualize things. It's almost as if you're in a complete VR simulation, or more deeper than that, as if you're living it. And he showed me a glimpse of what looked to me, this sounds odd, but it looked to me like almost like a 1950s parade, not necessarily in terms of technology, but maybe in terms of what you might see on TV, this idealized version of people party, in the streets happy or something. And he said, that's a representation of what you might call my home. Yeah. But beyond that, I don't really know what the purpose is. I did ask him if he ages beyond the age he is now. And he says, no, we grow up from babies to the age you see me now, but we don't age any further than that.
When was your last astral projection?
My last astral projection was in October. I couldn't tell you the date right now. I don't have my entire journal in front of me, but my last astral projection was in October. I do feel, in fact, I'm certain that in 2022, I will resume the practice. But I felt like after my interaction with the Greys and the Mantis type beings, which we can talk about, and then this slightly uncomfortable feeling, I felt like there was almost a chapter closed for me. To me, it felt like the culmination of things, and I wanted to take a break.
Really good way. I can really agree with this, because I've had a lot of these, let's say, good and bad experiences, and sometimes they were overwhelming, and sometimes you would have to witness a lot of dark, gross, bad stuff being done. But eventually, when you ask the right questions, when you're curious, you get a lot of answers, more understanding, and for me it means just so much. So every chance I get, instead of fighting or anything or doing something crazy, having conversation, if it fits the mood and everything else, it's just really interesting to see their story, understanding why, and just, just sort of trying to be able to grasp the bigger thing a bit more. I know that everything I know is nothing. I really don't know anything, compared to everything I've seen. It's just there's so much that there's like, I just can't grasp it, barely, like, so the more stories I hear, the more perspectives from these different beings, the more, like, okay, like, what are you all about? Why are you doing this and why and all the stuff? And just understanding their story helps me sort of connect the dots here and there, put things together, and just, like, okay, for now, seems like I understand this little tiny little bit out of infinite multiverse, so like, I'm really like, damn, like, really good for you, Peter, for like being curious, and you didn't think about like continuing and doing it more. Like, you're done with this chapter, so just moving on, and whatever else might pop up, or where it's the same groups, like, if you can handle that, it's really good.
I find it interesting that you were, I don't know if you said terrified or afraid when your actual abductions happened, that you were willing to go back and astral project and meet with them again.
Such is the curiosity I have about this phenomenon, like, my first two conscious experiences were completely terrifying. The experience I had roughly 7 years ago was not terrifying with my son. It was confusing, but it wasn't terrifying. At that point, however, I had already begun researching the phenomenon in earnest. And despite the fact that, some of those earlier experiences were quite scary, just to me, once I experienced it, I just want to know more. Mm-hmm. I want to know more. Why are they here? Why are they doing this? Even if the potential exists that it might be frightening or it might be uncomfortable, like it ended up being towards the end. I just want to know more, right? It's just that curiosity.
Can you tell us what you know about the Mantis beings?
Yeah. So during my inductions, what I do is I have a hypnotic induction that I use. I think I'd like to clarify one thing about astral projection, and that's that I think one of the mistakes people make, and they fail to grasp about astral projection, is that you're actually going within you. People make the big mistake of thinking that's an entirely separate, quote, place you travel to. I believe it's more of a universal consciousness that you're accessing when you astrally project. And in that sense, we're able to communicate with the entities on board these ships.
Let me stop you there real quick. But when you do astral project, are you having an out-of-body experience where you can see your body, let's say like from the ceiling or something?
100%. When I first leave my body, I can see my body from the ceiling. I always take off my watch. I can see where I placed my watch. Sometimes I put my phone upside down, for instance, and I can see that the phone's upside down. Yeah. So I'm 100% in the room at the time when I leave my body. Yeah. Yeah. But I do think you're accessing a universal consciousness when you do this. So when I first encountered the Mantis type entities, at the end of my induction, as I go deeper into my subconscious, usually I'm alone. However, the first time I encountered one of these Mantis type entities, there was something there. And I thought, this is really odd. There's something here with me. And then after I left my body and projected up there, I was with a Mantis type entity. And we were in, now this ship was quite different. This is the only analogy I can make. It looked like we were in some sort of Egyptian throne room. Things were brown. Now, the Mantis entity told me that we needed to undergo a process in order to communicate. And I said, oh, why aren't we communicating now? He said, no, we can communicate deeper. So for, I believe it was 3 or 4 sessions, he entered me into this, like I alluded to before, some sort of strange VR type experience where just I felt that just my brain was going a million miles an hour. And that went on for a few sessions before they actually conveyed any information to me. After that happened, and apparently it was successful, they began to communicate to me. What the Mantis type entity, the first one, told me was that they did indeed create these grays for that purpose. They said that they have a bigger agenda. This Mantis entity showed me a large crystal. It appeared to be encased in some sort of translucent case. And he held some reverence for this crystal. And it was as if he wanted me to feel the reverence too. And quite honestly, I didn't. Actually, it bored me. I know this sounds odd. You're having this crazy experience, but you feel bored. But it bored me. After 20 minutes of this, staring at a crystal, I was bored. At a later date, the second Mantis entity that I met with showed me something else. What he showed me was a truncated cone. So what I'm talking about is, if you can see the glass I'm holding here, the cup, basically this upside down. And it was orange or tan in color. And he said, this created everything. And so I said, well, like everything, like Earth? He said, no, I don't mean everything like Earth. He said, this is why we're here. This created the reason we're here. And this was all very confusing, but he elaborated to say that through this cone, I have no idea what it was, they were able to create the crystal. And that crystal apparently powers their ship or something to that effect. I'm not sure. Also through that cone, they were able to create apparently a bunch of other technologies. And I asked them, did you make this cone? Is this something you made? And he said, oh no, we didn't make it. We found it. And he imparted to me that they found it eons ago, like so long ago that my mind couldn't possibly comprehend. And I asked him, well, do you know who made it? And he said, we have an idea who made it, but don't worry about that right now. Again, the implication being I probably couldn't understand it. He also gave me one of those visions where like they sometimes impart information. And the idea was that when their species first encountered this cone, whatever it is, it was so powerful and they were so unable to deal with it, they would touch it and simply dissolve. So over millennia, they developed the ability to somehow use this cone to create interstellar vehicles or what have you, or eventually bring themselves to us.
Whoa. It's pretty good. Again, really great explained. I keep seeing a lot of these beings that, when I talk about you being God, a lot of these aliens and ETs don't really have it. Like, okay, they're stuck in this game, but they have long, lost that God creator's touch. They don't have it. They have to make things. They can't create. And while your visuals, your imagination can put things and manifest it, they literally have to go in somewhere and harvest the materials and take their time to build it. It takes you 1 second, it takes them a year, or, depends on how big the project is. So these mantis being able to find this upside down cone he was talking about, or this little techie thing, it's amazing. It just reminds me that, like, hey, there's a lot of things going on over here in the 3D where there's a lot of harvesting the godlike beings. You, me, a lot of people who are conscious, who are in ways are being abused. One is they're like trying to gather our loosh. A lot of this negative energy and our emotions and everything else that goes into this just creation is being taken. And then again, dreams. If there's constructs, if we have nightmares, if if we go into the construct of a dream, our creation is being harvested. Our, like awareness and energy again is being taken. There are lots of ways of how we can be abused. And there are lots of ways how third parties, and I'm not saying, oh, these are the specific minds that are doing this, certain groups, various aliens with their own interests. But the idea is that a lot of these groups are using same things, like say loosh and harvesting energy and harvesting humanity, and even like causing issues into our life where like all of a sudden, they can project thoughts into your head. And you might have no thinking, or you do think, and sometimes you're just gonna like pop a phrase that you didn't mean, and all of a sudden it caused an argument, or you fell out with someone, or like a lot of things where people are gonna tell you something is gonna piss you off and annoy you, and you're just gonna like, you had your whole attention outwards, you were enjoying the world, you were just like listening to sounds and bird tweeting and everything else. And all of a sudden someone tells you something and you're stuck inside, just like, like all pissed off. There's a lot of this energy. Well, all of that is being harvested. And then there's social media and certain like groups here on Earth with their own agendas where they're trying to direct their consciousness. A lot of ways, even religion is being used where we're being abused. Then we pray to God, but sometimes we're not specific who we're praying to exactly and what we're asking. Oh God, please help. Well, which God are you talking about exactly? And what kind of help do you want? Because a lot of times, certain phrases we say is like, again, opening the door and inviting the devil in. A lot of people out there, aliens, entities, they're going to like have this call and like, oh, well, someone just invited me and they can come in freely into your space. So again, like we do a lot of these things and we're being abused in certain ways where our energy and our creation is being directed. And certain groups will harvest this energy and use our creation, and they can store it into certain technologies they have, like let's say like this cube or this cone and all this stuff. They can just go and just program it. And anyone who's touching this, like let's say crystal or whatever, like kind of shaped thing that they've just created, like again, various technologies, various shapes and everything else. But our creation is now stored in that. And of course, it won't last long. It's like a battery cell. You're going to use the energy, and at some point, it's going to like, okay, it's no longer effective. It's just not working anymore. Same with the light bulbs. It's going to only have so many hours until it, okay, gone. Of course, there's one light bulb that's still up, working today since the very creation, but that's another topic. So anyway, this cone reminds me of just like more advanced race who was doing their thing and where they left it, or like something happened and that thing just got like, okay, abandoned or whatever. This Mantis group found it, and of course they weren't really able to comprehend or meet that creation on the same level, which is why they were dissolving and got into some issues. But gaining more understanding, they're able to use it. A lot of these races here in the 3D, in the physical universe, where they cannot create, where they do not have this God particle, see you as a threat or someone they're interested in, because you have that creation, you have this God particle. And hey, how great it would be if we could use someone, whether you have the great understanding or not, to have something created for them. So again, it's just my perspective, some of the things I saw. I'm not saying that everything is that way exactly. There are some groups doing some things, so a little bit of that and that here and there. Like not everything is that way specifically, but really great subject. Interesting. This group was like, like Peter is explaining this whole Mantis creation and everything else really well. Good job.
You've had some amazing experiences, and I'm running out of time.
Yes.
But I want to support you. Do you have anything that you would like to promote?
I do not, Jeff. I'm not here to promote anything. If there's one thing I would like to ask your viewers, however, is that if there is anyone out there that astrally projects, if they themselves would like to also attempt to astrally project, to see these visitors, to please do so. And I would like to engage in a conversation with anyone else that's successful, okay? In my email, if you would put it in the show notes, petewhitley@hotmail.com. Anyone out there that has this ability, please try to do so. And if you're successful, contact me. I know I've taken a lot of your time. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to get the story out. But there are many more details and some things I just simply don't want to talk about unless I can talk to someone else that has perhaps maybe experienced them themselves. I don't want to poison the well, so to speak. But yeah, if anyone out there is willing to do so, please contact.
Wow, what a great interview and a great wrap up. JeffMara did a great job with the questions. Peter, amazing with his stories and what he has experienced and confronted. So, hey, you haven't seen a lot of this interview here on my end. I've cut some parts, so be sure to go to JeffMara podcast on YouTube and check out Peter's interview with him. It's just amazing. So for me, I don't really watch these, so it's something new to me to react to something like this. But at the same time, when I do watch it, it's finally who has experienced something similar on such level explains things way better than I do. And, it's just a lot of confirmations to what I have seen and experienced. And again, it's just a glimpse to few beings, few groups, few of their agendas out of the whole picture. I can have my own assumptions. I can, maybe be lucky and go contact these beings and see what I can get. But it's just amazing. The technologies, the things being used, it's I've totally seen it. I couldn't put it in words and explain it. So Peter, did just a fantastic job explaining what's going on and the little things. Good or bad is always going to be for people you're watching and well, is it good group? Or what are they doing? Was the real goal? And it's a big rabbit hole to trying to understand it all. Again, I'm really glad that I'm really glad and happy that Peter is promoting that hey, people should try to astral project, should get out of body, should try to contact these beings. And even though it might be terrifying and scare you at first, there's a lot of things that can change in your life once you have a conversation with these beings. And again, you can direct yourself and try to meet, let's say you're looking at Grace reptilians and it's kind of scary, well, how do I confront them and what happens if? Well, then think of, let's say you might have heard about the good groups, let's say Pleiadians and Lyrans and Procyons and other things. You just focus on those. Focus on someone you would like to meet and talk to. And you can definitely do it all. You have all the abilities. Again, it's just a muscle. You have to find a tool that can help you get out and reach your goal. But again, you can talk to a lot of intelligent beings, get a better understanding. For me, this whole getting out of body has been life-changing 100%. And once I understood it, that's what I was doing for real, and not oh, it's just a dream, getting a better grasp of what's going on, even though I still barely understand everything or anything at all, but every little bit helps to just sort of put things in perspective. And eventually everything you learn here, you take with you when you get out. It's very important to have a better understanding, to have a better agenda, so that you could eventually compare notes. And again, like Peter says, don't take everything at face value, question everything, question me, and have a lot of things comparisons and everything else, cherry pick out the best parts eventually, so that your understanding would be getting better. Not necessarily to bash people, I would try to do that, but at the same point, it's really good. If you have questions and if you're nope, not my thing, good for you. Some people are really interested in that, and to me, it just seems so much better. And instead of paying thousands of dollars to go into a certain country to participate in this event with thousands of people trying to get an encounter and see a UFO in the sky, you can do it at your home. on the couch. If you learn the way, let's say, if you have a guide, or like you can contact Peter and talk about these experiences or what he did and all the stuff, even like maybe asking for a hypnosis track and all that, he can help you with that. Probably, maybe that's his thing. A lot of tools online, a lot of videos to watch. Again, it's a muscle, but you don't need to spend a lot of money. You can just like, okay, how can I get out of body or do astral projection, astral traveling? And how can I confront things? Like what are some of the questions you're going to ask? And again, like it's similar to meditation, or like, like you're floating in it. Of course, you're going to be active, but just being curious is what's going to help you. Just ask some questions and you're going to get better understanding. So I'm really glad there's like people who are bright and they're willing to share their story. Like in this world where you're kind of like being bashed for talking your own truth or your own experiences, even if it's like not fitting the biggest narrative we have right now, or the understanding. Some of us are like pioneers, and like for some it might be crazy, for others like, hey, one day, hopefully one day you'll experience something like it and your point of view will change. Until then, question and find your own truth. That being said, again, great interview. Please check out JeffMara's podcast on YouTube. Check out his interviews. There's a lot of them. And like, I'm going to leave the links and of course, emails and everything else. Cause like, hey, I'm just reaction. I'm like, so glad that there are people like that. So that being said, I hope like you enjoyed a bit of my perspective. Other than that, please watch their videos and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.